Okay, if you would, let's call this this meeting to order for January 12th, 2015. We're going to open with our prayer, followed by invocation, and we're going to ask Commissioner Hunnicutt if he would lead us in the prayer and invocation, and then we'll pledge allegiance to the flag.
Okay, may we pray. Lord, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for all the many, many blessings you pass our way each and every day. We ask that you forgive us where we fail you. Be with us tonight as we deliberate about the utility business of Fort Valley, Georgia. Ask that you would look after those and tend to those who need your help and blessing, sick and in harm's way. But just be with us as we deliberate this evening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome our visitors. We especially note we have our DDA chairman, Mr. Bobby Barnes. We have Mrs. Bentley, our city utilities commission, utility attorney's wife, traveling with him tonight. And we'd like to welcome again in the new year Mr. Ervin Williams, who's going to be our technology recorder for this season. I'm going to call now for the approval of the minutes of our work session meeting on December 2nd, 2014, and then the regular meeting of December 8th, and the call meeting for December 15th. I open the meeting to hear your disposition on those three sessions. On those three sessions.
Take them all as
Come
one.
on in. We welcome you.
Take them all at the same time. Or are we going to do individual?
I think we could take them all at the same time, and if there are questions, you could note which ones you have questions, and we'll address it at that time. We have, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve the 3 sets of minutes.
I second the motion. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded that we will approve the 3 sets of minutes. Do we have questions for either set of minutes? Any questions? All right, then if I'm in order, I'll call for the vote since there's no question. All those in favor, let it be known by show of hands. All right, it's unanimous. Work session meeting of December 2nd, regular meeting of December 8th, and call meeting December 15th are all approved for the record. At this time, we'll call on our general manager to let us hear the activity reports for the month of December 2014.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Attached for your review, question, comment are the activity reports from each of our departments from the month of December 2014. Everything is in order, business as usual. We were on track for right about 10 million kilowatt hours of sales last year, which is very healthy, very substantial. Nothing unusual. Other than our folks were extremely busy. And when it gets cold, it gets even busier.
All right, do we have any questions for our general manager for any of the activity reports from either department? All of the department's reports have been prepared and provided for you in advance, so you've got time to review. Do you have any questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to publicly thank the linemen of the Utility Commission for their diligence in getting the Christmas lights installed and taking them back down. They worked diligently with it. I don't know if they finished yet after Christmas, but everything was beautiful in Fort Valley again as a result of the collaboration between them, Public Works, and the individual citizens.
Thank you, Mayor, and we do appreciate that work. I thought I noticed extra lights. Did I?
We did have some.
I was thinking I was seeing some additional lights.
Add some each year.
Okay. All right. They were beautiful. I wish there was some way we could afford to keep them up all year long. I've asked that before. Commissioner Dankel?
While we're passing out things, I had a problem, the second one, at my house several days ago with the sewer that was in the street. And I just tell you, I cannot say enough good things about our employees. They are just so gracious and nice and quick to handle things, and I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll make sure that gets where it needs to be. Appreciate that.
We say it all the time. They care.
They're
And
good.
they show that they care.
Yes, ma'am.
And he told me, he said there was a problem in the street somewhere, and he gave us a quick fix so that our toilets would flush and that kind of thing. But he said, until we can get back to complete this job, I don't care what time it is, day or night, call us and we'll be right out. So
Good people.
Okay, good.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. And we're counting on you to let them know that
Yes, ma'am.
we appreciate that. The next item on our agenda is the comprehensive annual financial report, fiscal year 2014. Do we have any questions or comments regarding that report? Do we need to make a motion to adopt it as part of the record, or just receive it as information? I think would be sufficient. Okay. We don't have any old business for tonight, so we'll move right into our new business. Unless you have some old business, we don't have any as a part of our agenda. Let's look at our new business. The first item on the agenda is the voluntary deposits with our municipal competitive trust. We need a vote of approval or a vote of disapproval. If we get approval for this, as we discussed it in our work session, then we'll go ahead and execute those documents tonight and get them on schedule. What is your pleasure?
I move that we accept the
Authorize.
authorize the deposits to be made as outlined in our packet.
Okay. You have a motion. Do we get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. It's been properly motioned and seconded that we will be authorized to execute the documents, and that authorization will be signed by your chair and your commission secretary. Okay. And the documents are prepared. We'll execute them tonight. All right. Do you have any?
Secretary, I'm sorry.
No, it's the
Finance manager.
The two signatories for the municipal competitive trust are Dollie, Horton, and Pat McFall.
Right. Did I say secretary? I meant finance manager. I apologize. Okay. Thank you. The document's correct. Okay. Pat McFall and I will be signing those documents. All right. Do we have any other questions or discussions regarding this? All right, then I call for the vote. All those in favor, let it be known by show of hands. Opposes the same sign. All right, then it's unanimously carried. We will execute the documents at the close of business this meeting tonight. The next item on our agenda is the CB&T construction loan renewal with the USDA and Fort Valley State University's water project. Do we have any questions or comments regarding that? We had that we had a discussion regarding that in our work session. We had a meeting regarding that as well.
Dan and some of them met with CB&T.
Yeah,
Did that go well?
Yes, sir.
Very well.
Everything was in order. Thank you, Madam Chair, for joining us. Everything was outlined, and again, this is just a renewal of where we should have been in construction right now.
The meeting went well. We met with all of the officials at the bank on last Friday. Pat McFall and Thompson and I met with them. And everything's in order for us to move forward with that. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that, Pat, as our finance manager?
Yes, please. The Keith Beckham with the bank would like the resolution or the motion that we anticipate you passing tonight. The bank would like the specific wording that you're authorizing the general manager and the finance manager to bind the commission to pledge the deposits and to borrow the money. Those are the three action words that they need. The construction loan, which is due on January the 19th, is for $403,979.99. That's the draw on the loan so far. We have, the Utility Commission has a certificate of deposit that is pledged as collateral, and the new terms on that deposit, both of the renewals will be for an 18-month period, because that's the amount of time that we believe the construction of the project at Fort Valley State University will take. They will pay us 1% interest on the deposit, and then they will charge us an additional 1% interest on the outstanding balance of the construction loan over the next 18 months.
Commissioner Johnson?
Can you please have them to repeat how the motion should be stated?
Pat, would you share the language for that motion for us again, please?
The bank would like the Utility Commission to authorize the general manager and the finance manager to bind the commission to, well, that we have the authority to bind the commission, that the commission pledges this deposit as collateral, which it already has, and to authorize, well, let me back up. You're authorizing Dan and I to do three things: bind the commission, pledge the collateral, and borrow the money, which is what you did 3 years ago. Now, the reason that it is Dan and I are the two employees of the Utility Commission that are authorized to do business with the bank. Any individual utility commissioner per se is not authorized to do business with the bank, so that's why it's the two of us.
Pledge the collateral, and you have the collateral.
Yes.
Okay.
Bind the commission, pledge the collateral, and borrow the money. And they have a standard, besides the resolution that you'll hopefully will pass tonight, they have a standard resolution form that the bank will ask Dan and I to sign.
There's nothing unusual about
And
that.
and that's typically how it's done. That's the way it was done in the past, and we're following that same process. Commissioner Johnson?
I would like to make the motion that the Utility Commission authorize the general manager and the finance manager to bind the commission, pledge the collateral, and borrow the money.
All right. You have the motion. May I get a second?
A second.
All right. It's been properly motioned and seconded that we would authorize our general manager and finance manager to bind the commission, pledge the collateral, and borrow the money from CB&T for this project. Are there any questions? All right. Then I call for a vote. All those in favor, let it be known by show of hands. All right, it's unanimously carried. The next item on our agenda is the intergovernmental note that's receivable with the Fort Valley Main Street DDA. And we all have their proposed letter of intent. May I hear your pleasure on that?
Madam Chairman, would you like for me to make a general comment?
Yes, sir. It will help us a lot.
We received a letter from Billy Geralds, the attorney for the DDA. As you recall, there's an outstanding loan payable that the Downtown Development Authority had with Sunmark, with the Utility Commission as guarantors. That loan came due. The Utility Commission purchased the loan from Sunmark, so we now own the loan. And the letter before you contains the terms and conditions that the DDA would like to propose for repayment. It's a 60-month note. It does not say whether there will be monthly payments, but we have the director and also the chairman. We can ask them. I will assume it would be monthly payments. If you do the math off the top of your head, it's $5,000 down, so the principal of the new loan would be $131,000, 60-month term. So off the top of my head, that's roughly $2,600 a month. 'Give or take a little bit. 1% interest. You just heard that we were getting 1% off of a certificate of deposit. When Dan and I discussed this, we asked ourselves, well, do we think it's commercially reasonable to receive 1%? We're renewing a note on a larger transaction at 2% through a commercial lender. We don't have the overhead the commercial lender has. 1%, I believe, is for the Utility Commission's purpose sufficient off of to show that we are in fact at an arm's length transaction. The Downtown Development Authority has agreed to pledge 2 properties as collateral, which would be the Passenger Depot and Nina's Beauty Supply. If you'll recall from your notes, both of those are free and clear, if I'm not mistaken, and they will have a rough value of approximately this, close to the total note amount. And currently we are unsecured. So the question that was asked to me was, before the meeting was, well, do you think a 5-year term is too long? As I recall, this loan with Sunmark was originally on a 6-month interest-only transaction. Then it went to a 35 or 36-month term. And that's what came due last year, was the first 36-month term. I do not know from the loan documents what the long-term amortization schedule was. Frequently banks will take a loan of this nature and balloon it every 36 months so they can adjust the interest, and that's what Sunmark was doing. So I don't know what their intended amortization was, whether it was to pay it back in a 10-year period, but I suspect it was close to a 10-year period. So actually, the term that they have proposed is a shorter payback period than what they had really originally operated under. So from a standpoint of what I had recommended that we accomplish, which was to get this on a payback schedule, to have the terms and conditions reduced in writing, and to have the loan secured, all of those goals are accomplished. The issue is the term sufficient, or would you like a shorter term? Or I am at your pleasure for purposes of contacting Mr. Geralds with the reply to this proposal. But it is my opinion that it is commercially reasonable for the Utility Commission to accept the terms.
Well, we thank you for your statement. Anyone, any questions regarding this? I have a question. Provided we accept these terms, do we still get our November 2014 payment of $11,000? That didn't get paid in November.
Our motion was to pay $5,000.
Dollar. Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding of the letter from Billy Geralds is that, and I'm glad we have the two of you here to correct my misunderstanding if there is one. My understanding of the offer to the Utility Commission is there will be a one-time payment of $5,000 principal. The interest rate on the outstanding balance for 5 years will be 1%. There will be interest-only payments annually for 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, the principal is due and payable, and presumably there is a right to prepay the note should the two properties that are pledged as collateral are sold. So that's my understanding. $5,000 interest only, payable at the end of the year for 5 years at 1%, and the balance payable at the end of 5 years. Now,
You know what, Pat, you're correct. I misread what they wrote. I assumed that they were making monthly payments, and
now the note that we have and the history with Sunmark, the amortization schedule, in other words, calculating the debt service on the note, was for 30 years. However, the two notes that were out there were for 36 months each, with a balloon payment at the end of 36 months. And we cycled through that once, and then this past May was the second cycle through. The terms with the bank were payments in November and in May of each year, the total payment being $11,588.01. The 30-year amortization, which was, I'll have to look it up. That 30-year amortization, although it was a 3-year note with semi-annual payments, caused the interest to be in the ranging from $3,635 to $4,550, and the principal payment on the notes ranging from $7,915 to $7,038. Hence the amortization over 30 years, although it was a 3-year note with a balloon payment. And the reason, conventional wisdom is, the bank wanted to protect itself for rising or falling interest rates. That's why there would be a balloon payment at the end of 36 months. The note that we have right now has a late charge of basically $792. The post-maturity rate on the unpaid balance of the note owing after maturity and until paid in full is 16%. The unpaid balance at the note owing after maturity and until paid in full, well, right now it's $135,000 and change. The accrued interest on that note right now is about $65. So those are the facts.
Okay, and the letter, thank you for detailing it for us, but the letter clearly says in item number 2 that the interest, 1% interest, is only going to be paid annually on or before December 31st each year. And it said it would make an immediate down payment. That's why I asked the question, will this immediate $5,000 down payment come after you've made the past due payment in November? That, you know, we were thinking we were going to get the same type payments in May and November while you work on whatever you were going to do to help, you know, help repay us. I didn't understand that that was just going to wash out. Maybe you can help me with that.
The interest rate on the note is 5%.
5% at the bank right now.
Well,
It was at the bank at 5%.
5%. That's what the 30-year amortization was based on, 5%.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Help me, yes.
I don't think they intend to pay the November payment. Their intention is to pay one payment of $5,000. And I read the letter differently. I read the letter that they were amortizing the entire loan over a 60-month period, and they were going to pay interest once a year. So they were going to make
Monthly,
principal payments monthly.
and then interest once a year.
That's what I find commercially reasonable. If what the intention is that they only pay interest in December and no principal for a 5-year term, I cannot. That is an entirely different transaction.
Okay, thank you, Attorney, Commissioner Johnson.
Pat, can you please repeat for us what we as the commission would be looking at in terms of this proposal? You did mention the fact that the down payment and the interest rate, but please repeat the latter part that you gave us a few minutes ago regarding paying, I think,
And let me
paying
say,
at
let me
the
say
end of the
this.
5-year period.
We have the chairman of the Downtown Development Authority here, and if there is a misunderstanding of the terms of the offer to the Utility Commission, I think that Bobby Barnes would be a good person to look to. My interpretation of the offer to the Utility Commission is that 5-year term of the note, a one-time principal payment up front of $5,000. The interest rate is 1%, interest only at the end of each year for 5 years, and presumably there would be a balloon payment of the note in full at that point in time. It doesn't say that, but you would presume that. They are pledging 2 specific properties as collateral, which are free and clear at the moment, and they are saying that should those properties be sold, that the proceeds from that sale would be applied against the principal, and there's no penalty for prepayment of principal on the note. That's my understanding of the offer to the Utility Commission.
Perfectly stated.
All right. Maybe I'll score a touchdown tonight in the National Championship.
All right, Commissioner Johnson.
All of that is not stated in writing, and I think that it would serve us well to have this in writing, and I don't see that in this letter.
Exactly. I think you're exactly right. We need, and I think Commissioner Johnson is on target with that.
Hold on a second.
My letter doesn't say all that Pat is saying. I do get the $5,000 down payment. I do get the interest only paid in December, but all of the other, languages.
I think you're absolutely right.
I think we need to go back to the table.
The general manager approached me and said that perhaps you should consider tabling further
I think
action
so.
to your February
Yeah.
work session
Yes.
to allow Pat and myself to meet with Billy Gerald's and get some clarification, and also for the board to talk to Pat and myself at your work session and decide whether or not what we believe the proposal to be is what the Utility Commission finds acceptable. I think that the unstated part of this is whether it is a straight interest-only payment for 5 years, or the unstated part is that it was principal payment, but one-time payment annually for interest. From what I'm hearing from the chairman, it is intended as an interest-only loan for 5 years. And I think that there's some discussion that needs to be had by the Utility Commission, given the historic budget that the commission has had toward paying this loan back, and the straight transfer to the city that incorporates the same amount to the general transfer of the city for use in its discretion for other governments.
Let the record show that Bobby Barnes nodded in agreement to my interpretation of the offer officially made to the Utility Commission. Did I get it right?
You stated it exactly the way the DDA board intended for this letter to go out.
Fine, thank you.
Okay,
Just needs to go in there.
all right.
I have one more observation. As we look at this letter, number 3, the last sentence, it says that there are no liens on these properties and the Utilities Commission would have a first position. What does that mean?
If it's sold.
If it's sold, we get paid first. But then I see, that's basically that's what I understand. Maybe, attorney, you might need to clear us up on that.
It means a little more than that. It also means that if they default, that we can foreclose and take the property.
And take the property.
That is was the primary objective, and also to find a way to pay back the money that the Utility Commission paid for the loan, because it was a commercial transaction. They were making biannual payments on that. I think that you would be better served to address this at your work session. I don't see a consensus on this tonight, given the additional terms that are needed.
Madam Chair, if I'm in order, I make a motion that we table this item until all of the terms are presented in writing explicitly, to maybe at least until the next meeting.
I second the motion.
All right. The motion. Okay.
So,
All right, that's a song. All right, it's been properly motioned and seconded that our board will table this action until such time that we can get all the details clear and in writing. You've heard the conversation. Is there any other question? I would like to note that in the next paragraph following the 1, 2, 3 items, the very last statement there says that DDA would seek release for purposes of sale with all or part. That kind of weakens it a little bit, so we're going to bring that up again too in our work session. But I just want, it's still kind of lingering longer even with that language. So we're going to, anything else? Any other questions? All right. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by show of hands. All right. It's unanimous. We'll table this until such time we can work out the details of this transaction to the satisfaction of all boards, in particular ours, in concern with this note.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
And I think that when we had the joint meeting, what we said to them was, present us with a plan. And now, and they've done that. I guess maybe there was the caveat there, the unspoken caveat maybe, that present us with an acceptable plan. So I'm gathering that if they have no intention of paying anything on the principal, then you're saying that that may not be acceptable?
That's up to the board.
We have to make
Okay.
that decision.
You put off for 5 years a decision I guess my point to you is this. If you recall the history, prior to this year, the Utility Commission historically funded DDA $25,000. And the city also funded $25,000. The money, city in the Utility Commission raised the Utility Commission raised how much it was paid to help cover the payment of this particular debt. So to $35,000. When the Utility Commission voted to, instead of earmark specific amounts of money to specific local governments, and instead say to the city, here is X number of dollars, spend it however you choose to spend it. The same $35,000 was a part of the base. So the money typically would be going, I assume, to the DDA to pay back this note. And my question to you for your work session is do you want them to pay the note back as they would be required to otherwise pay a typical commercial lender versus a 5-year balloon? Because there are many issues you should address at your work session, but understanding that if it's interest only, one time, one annual payment, there's no real incentive to sell any property.
I'm thinking that it might be appropriate for us to consider suspending those $35,000 contributions to the DDA while this is happening.
Well, or I think that if it had been a little bit clearer, you know, Pat's interpretation, my interpretation, and I think his is obviously what they intended. I think if they were to amortize this over 60 months, pay principal and interest as I outlined originally, I think that is a reasonable commercial transaction. And at your work session, I will probably be presenting to you in writing that we counter with that. But I think that we all need to sit back, make sure that their terms are what we think. You know, Pat's pointed out a couple things that were not addressed in their letter, which would be a late fee, you know, a few things that we need clarification from Mr. Gerald. So give us a little bit of time to talk about it, and we'll go from there.
To help answer your question, the $100,000 was transferred to the city with no strings attached. So the Utility Commission has no say in how the city funded the Downtown Development Authority. It is my understanding, though, that there was no change in the total funding in 2015. So the Downtown Development Authority got what the city budgeted for last year plus the $35,000. So the Downtown Development Authority has the same total cash contribution for their fiscal year 2015 that they had in their fiscal year 2014. They are choosing not to spend any of that money to repay the Utility Commission in 2015. Their budget is already set, and there was no debt service in their budget per the information that was given to us at the Hall joint meeting last Monday.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I guess I wasn't thinking about 15. It was beyond 15, that we would not include the $35,000 to our transfer to the city. Is what
I want to make it clear that we did that even before the first fourth of the $100,000 came in. We budgeted the 75 that we normally give and the 35 that the Utility Commission would normally give also up front. And we just got the 25,000 last month. So they hadn't done anything to repay any portion of that. I thought they would have said maybe in November, what we were supposed to pay in November, they could do that, but they had chosen not to do that.
I specifically asked the question about the November payment because in the joint meeting we held last week, it was clearly stated to me that they had the $11,000 to pay in November, but it was already January and had not been paid. And then clearly with this letter, and clearly here tonight, it was stated that it's not going to be paid. So I guess my concern, and we'll take it up again in the work session, but I want to just go ahead and let the record show that my concern is we should have gotten that $11,000 in November, and we really should have been, based on what the mayor just said and what we've all known, based on the income that they receive, we should have been positioning them to give an additional payment or make a better plans for a repayment. And then it would have just been a matter of collateralizing the loan if we had just stayed steadfast, if they had just stayed steadfast with what they were doing. But nonetheless, we have a motion. We've discussed it. Did we vote on it? I got so excited. We did. So all right then. Don't let me backtrack. Let us then act according, govern ourselves accordingly. We'll have a work session. Is it going to be a work session next month, or is it going to be a called work session?
I believe Madam Chair, it can roll right into February work session.
Work session.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then.
Unless we're directed otherwise.
Quick question.
Okay.
Has there been any communication with the DDA and our staff
No.
prior to this, receiving this letter?
No, sir, not to our knowledge.
Okay.
It kind of feels like to me that, and we don't want this. It kind of feels like to me that the DDA is holding back, and it makes us look like we are being bad cops. You know, we don't want that feeling. We want to have a better community spirit about this operation. They know the good business practice here. They know what they were supposed to have done in November. We don't want to play the good cop, bad cop situation here. We just want them to level with us and tell us what they're going to do, how they're going to repay the note, and we're willing to work with it. But the further out we get, the further away from getting paid we seem to get, and we don't want to be in that position.
Well, if y'all meet in February, and if you come up with a proposal that you would like for them to agree to, then you have capped what the repayment plan would be. And if you're satisfied with that cap, then so be it. If you merely reject their offer, thank you but no thank you, and you put them in the position of making a second offer, then you have not capped what they will offer.
I agree. I mean, we said come up with a plan, well, they did it. So now we said, well, come up with another plan. I mean, we could play that.
Yeah, and it's game been played all last year. As a matter of fact, this game kind of been played for the last, I don't know how many years this note has been on the table. And that was my thought all along. You know, we keep playing this wait and see game. What has happened is the money that the $180,000 that we invested in the first place and stood for in the first place is in a situation where now they got to spend some more money to make that building resurface again. So, it's like we can't keep putting our good money after bad games. And I'm feeling bad about it. So we need to do whatever we need to do to keep from stretching it out and going ahead, and let's just do what we have to do. It's debt. And they owe it, and we need to get paid. And we're not in the real estate business, so we don't need to be holding buildings. We need to just clean the note up and get it. We can't own buildings. We can't own these buildings.
To me, it's fair to the DDA too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did what we asked them to do, but if we had said to them, last week, we expect you to come up with a plan to do the following things, that would have been something that they could have understood and then dealt with. So I guess that's where we are now. We're saying, please come up with a plan to do a specific thing, and that is better for them than giving them they need some direction.
I think when we close out that meeting, go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I would like to say, with Commissioner saying what she has said, that maybe we should reconsider not the February meeting, but maybe sometimes in January, so that our lawyer can help us to craft something in writing so that they can understand us and we can understand them. I'm a visual person, and then when it comes to the law and legal documents, I don't want to assume anything. I like to see things in writing.
I do too.
And if he's going to help us to do that, I think that we should do this as soon as possible.
Well, you know, and you're absolutely right. And if it's in writing, we can clearly understand it. But one thing for sure, we walked away from the City Hall last Monday with a clear understanding that we were expecting a timeline with a certain amount. It was even asked in last week's meeting. Did y'all have the money to pay the Utilities Commission $11,000 in November? The answer was yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't walk away from the meeting with no takeaways. We walked away with from the meeting with a clear understanding that we were looking for our November payment, and we were looking for a plan how we're going to handle this note, how you're going to repay us. But we didn't. I just didn't think that. And I even specifically looked at their attorney and said, "Do you clearly understand what we need here?" He said, "I understand."
But we should have.
When he sent this, he sent it to you, didn't he?
I got it in the mail today.
You just got it today?
I got a copy.
Email.
I got an email last week, but I had no prior conversation. And this is,
So y'all hadn't discussed it?
you're welcome to debate this, talk about this, but my advice is going to be something along the lines of, I understood from that meeting last Monday that they were going to set a plan for repayment of the principal. That one of the issues that Mr. Gerald and I were going to discuss is the rate of interest. And at one point we had talked about the possibility of zero interest loan. They came back with 1%, which, given the circumstances, I could support. I have a more difficult time supporting a plan that is 1% interest only for 5 years, because that is so radically different than the previous terms and conditions of the note, and also different than what I thought we left the meeting as last Monday. I thought we left them with that meeting, you need to begin to pay this note back, and we want it collateralized. So, as I said, if it were paid back over a 60-month term at 1% interest with a late payment fee, and I think that that's reasonable. I think that's eminently reasonable, but that's not what was proposed.
Would the five of you as a body consider asking Joel to represent you and to begin renegotiating the terms, making a counter offer, let Joel represent the Utility Commission and deal with Mr. Gerald's or directly with the Downtown Development Authority, let him represent you, let Joel come up with a counter proposal to be presented to you as a body at any point in time with a time frame of the February work session to be a time frame to say yes or no, this is what we can agree to, this is our counter offer, and you may even be able to accept a counter offer prior to that meeting based upon Joel's negotiation process with the, in other words, let it begin tomorrow morning and ask Joel to represent you and take this process forward.
I think that's a good idea, because when the DDA met, even though Mr. Gerald was there, and he's the city attorney as well as some he's representing the DDA, the question is who he's invoicing. When he invoices the city, and they have a 3-hour meeting like they had last Tuesday night, 3-hour meeting, somebody else is going to have to pay if they don't do something to try to put a stop, try to put an end. They need to come to some conclusion, because the clock is ticking when you guys sit and do stuff, and we know that. And I think just like they're expecting us to pay that note for them, they're expecting the city to pay that attorney while he's sitting there too. So you guys get together and bring some end to it.
And I don't mean to put you in the
No, I'm happy
corner.
to
If
do
you
it.
don't think that's a good
No,
idea,
no,
please.
I think that's fine. I've sort of outlined what I think the terms of it ought to be. I need you to say, are you willing to accept 1 year? 1%, or are you willing to accept a 5-year term, payable in monthly installments, semi-annual installments, annual installments? Just give me the parameters or give Dan and I the parameters to make a proposal to them that we'll come back before the February work session and say, this is what we recommend. Don't forget that you said the interest rate was 5% or 6% they were paying.
It was 5% in the original note.
Part of the whole benefit of all of this was to go from 5% to 1%.
Exactly.
And the loan's still there. It's never been forgiven. It is a loan. It is on the books. It is a valid loan. So the benefit to the DDA in all of this is the fact that the interest rate will be greatly reduced. And it may be that we modify the terms that are easier for them.
And I think the other thing that should not be lost tonight is the fact, I'm just piggybacking on what Joe said. The Utility Commission has a note that says it's due and payable right now. Okay?
Exactly.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Exactly.
There is a late fee of about $900 that they owe on that note. That when the balloon payment was not made in May, that the interest rate converted to 16% annually on the unpaid balance of the note. That works out to whatever.
It's a lot of money. That's
Either $45 or $60, I forget, and a nickel. But that's the terms of the note right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's my point in not having this thing continue to drag out. The sooner we get to terms, the sooner they understand this is a valid note. This needs to be paid. We're not trying to sell buildings. We're not trying to do the DDA job. We just want to set some quality terms to get this money repaid and do it as quickly as we can. It's been dragging a long time now. And go ahead and give us the $11,000 and let's fix the rest of it in terms that we can handle. With all that being said, I think we are on target to say that our attorney, we will work together with our general manager, and if the board is okay with that, I'll give our input as best I can to help us get these terms together, because we need to expedite this situation. That money was forwarded to them last October. None of it has come back to us beyond August. So we're sitting here, just fiddling along. We don't need to be playing the cat and the fiddle here. We need to just make the terms reasonable for all of us and workable for all of us. Let's just do that, if that's okay with everybody. We don't need to take a vote, do we?
Madam Chair, with your permission, our attorney and myself will have something for our commission by the end of the week, if that's acceptable.
Okay, it suits me.
Very good.
And we'll walk away from that. We'll set up some other timelines and we'll move on with this. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else that needs to come before the board tonight? Before we leave, I'd like to acknowledge my friends from the community. We've already acknowledged Mrs. Bentley and Mr. Williams, our technology gentleman. But I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Sammy Jefferson, Mr. Thomas, and Mr. Grover Wright.
Yeah.
And they are. I had a pleasure of seeing them Saturday in the East Ward, and they are in here tonight. They said they would be here tonight, and we're happy.
I think they have been given the title, the mayor of Griffin Line.
Chairman of the board. And Ms. Jefferson will do whatever you tell her. She'll take a title and she'll work that one, and when you need her to change hats, she'll do that too. She's been around a long time. It's a pleasure having you come in support of our board meeting. We thank you so much for what you do